I had only ever come across this dresser in my dreams. No, seriously, I'd seen them online, but I never thought I'd see one in person. So I couldn't run fast enough to go pick it up. And I was so honored to be able to buy it from the original owner. It's made by White Fine Furniture Company, and from what he told me, it's from the early 1970s. No, I am not gonna paint it. I don't even know how long it's gonna take me, and I don't care. I'm gonna strip the whole thing down to raw wood and I guess take it from there.
I'm Amy. I build and revive furniture, often adding something new to something old. I'm sharing tips, tricks, and methods on how to give old pieces a new lease on life. Welcome to my shop. This dresser is in pretty remarkable shape. There's no major damage to the veneer or the structure. And the condition of the top, well, it's to be expected for a piece that's at least 50 years old. When I remove one of the drawers, I can get a peek at what the raw wood might look like. And I'm marveling again at what great shape this piece is in. So the first step is to remove the old hardware carefully, since I will be cleaning it up and reusing it. The cabinet door pulls have a back plate that's attached with a tiny brass finishing nail. So I'm using a flat metal tool and tapping the end with a hammer to carefully dislodge it. As I said, I'm not going to paint this piece, so I'm getting out my favorite stripper and supplies. A bunch of different brushes, a scraping tool, and a small bucket that I line with a plastic grocery bag. This is for the stripping residue. Using a chip brush, I apply a layer of the stripper to the piece and wait about 15 minutes. Then I take a flat scraping tool and start to nudge the old finish off. If it feels sticky or isn't moving, it just means the stripper is dried out before it's gotten through all the old finish. So I just brush on more stripper to reactivate it, wait a few minutes, and then try again. Because the stripper is drying out pretty fast on this project, I'm only doing a few pieces at a time. For these beautiful turn wood legs, I taped off the little brass tips, and then after applying the stripper, I'm using a plastic bristle brush to scrub off the old finish. For the flat parts, a scraper works fine, but for curved parts like this, I use the brush, then I take a rag and warm water to wipe away the stripping residue. So this is probably controversial, but I never remove the cabinet doors unless I absolutely have to. Why? Because I can never seem to reattach them the same exact way they were originally hung. And oftentimes they don't hang straight, or they rub up against each other, or they rub up against the frame. So if I have a piece whose cabinet doors are straight, working properly, and aren't rubbing up against anything they're not supposed to, I really try and leave them on. And yes, these brass hinges do need to be cleaned, and I'll show you how to do that later in the video. This is one of the reasons I like using clean strip. Any residue left from the stripping is really sticky and can be difficult to remove. But obviously you have to remove it or you can't move on to the next step. Clean Strip cleans up with water, so I don't have to buy any special cleanup products. A lot of times vintage furniture is made with all kinds of different wood that are all different colors and grain patterns. But you don't really find that out until you remove the factory finish, and then it looks like a hodgepodge. But in this case, I've only got 2 different wood colors here. The frame, legs, and trim pieces are one type of wood, and the veneer on the drawer and cabinet fronts is a slightly darker wood. But before I deal with that, I still have some old finish to remove, so I'm using my carbide scraper and some other handy tools to get into these hard to reach spots. I'll link all these tools in the video description. So I have to tell you, I have a lot of time invested already in this dresser, and although I know it's a good quality piece and I love the design, I still don't yet know what I'm going to do once I get it all sanded down and ready for finishing. That's not true. I actually know what I want, I just don't know if I'll be able to get it to look the way that I want. When it comes to veneer, unless the old finish is failing, meaning it's peeling or flaking off really easily, I almost always use stripper before sanding. I didn't used to though. When I first started doing furniture, I used to go right to sanding, and I don't think my results were as good. I had a really hard time getting all the finish off consistently, and I went through a lot of sanding pads and it would just take hours. So even though stripping is an extra step and it can be messy, I just seem to get a better result. My Surf Prep sander is extremely useful in sanding this piece because there's just a lot of tight little corners and narrow spaces that a 5-inch orbital sander just can't get to. And when I attach a foam sanding pad, I can get over most of the curved trim parts too. Here's where you can really start to see the difference in the wood colors between the trim and the veneer. It may look weird, but I've used this method to clean brass hardware many times and it works great. I simmer the hardware in a 50-50 mixture of white vinegar and water for about 20 minutes. Do not use one of your regular cooking pots for this. It's going to be gross and, well, it's simmered vinegar, so it's not going to smell good either. Anyway, I picked up this pot at a thrift store and I only use it for what is now referred to as hardware cooking. So then I pull them out one at a time and scrub with Barkeeper's Friend and fine steel wool. The last thing I want to do is stand at my kitchen sink any more than I already do, but these look amazing now. And did you notice that leg was a little loose? So there were no visible screws or bolts to tighten. So the only way I knew how to firm that up was with good wood glue and clamps. I'm using these little syringes to get as much glue as possible into that gap. Then I'll use a 3-foot clamp to tighten it in place until the glue dries. You need to use clamping pressure when you're gluing parts together, so plan ahead and make sure you have the right size or kind of clamps before you start. And always look for glue squeeze out when you're tightening. This tells you that you've put enough glue in the gap. Okay, so what I want is an all-over light natural wood look. So in order to bring the two different wood colors together, I'm gonna try a paint wash. I've had some success with this lately, but a paint wash is basically watered down paint that you brush on and wipe off before it dries completely. And what it does is it adjusts or tints the color of the wood, but it doesn't cover up the wood grain like full strength paint would. Yes, stain does work in a similar way, and if I wanted a dark, rich color, stain would be a better choice. But for this piece, I want to keep the final color a light, natural tan. So I'm using a 50-50 mixture of 2 different paint colors. Then I'm adding water to the mixture at a ratio of about 4 parts water to 1 part paint. So I brush the paint and water mixture on with a brush, then I wipe it off with a disposable shop towel. After the paint wash is completely dry, I want to add a protective top coat, so I'll be using a water-based polyurethane. I'm using an HVLP sprayer, which does an amazing job on both paint and clear coats. Because refinishing furniture is my full-time job, I've invested in tools and equipment that help me be efficient and produce a professional quality result. If you're just starting out, you don't need this equipment to do this project. There are lots of clear coats, including this one, that can be applied with a brush or other applicators. There are also a lot of entry-level paint sprayers on the market that are not expensive and are very easy to use. The drawer bottoms on this piece were in really good shape, but after I sanded the center drawers behind the cabinet doors, they were still a little scuffed up, so I decided to add a liner to them. Honestly, I just love an excuse to add a pop of color. I measure the drawer bottom and add about a ½ inch to each dimension. Then I peel back the top left corner, place it down, and make sure it's lined up straight across the front. Then I reach underneath and slowly peel the backing at an angle, smoothing it down as I go. Then I take a metal ruler and a cutting tool to trim off the excess. If this looks easy, it's because I've had to practice a lot. And I've ripped out quite a few wrinkled, ripped, crooked, sticky paper messes out of frustration. So if you're new to this, I hope it comes naturally to you, but if it doesn't, like me, just make sure you order some extra until you get a good feel for it. So, let's take a minute to remember where we started. And here's how it looks now. I probably say this too often at the end of a project, but I wish I could keep this one. It really looks like an heirloom piece now. But before I could even produce and upload the video to YouTube, it sold to a wonderful couple who'd been on the lookout for just the right piece for their home for almost 3 years. But what do you think? Do you like the light natural wood look? Let me know in the comments. I'm already working on something new, so make sure you like and subscribe so you can see more projects. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.